get one more on there. Again, I'm editing. I mean, you should see me. I'm cutting. Mostly I cut. Because that's what they say.
All you can do.
YouTube, man. I mean, well, if you're watching this episode of BIKEVIDS, honestly, it's because you care. It's because you care. The other ones
for the diehard
right?
fans.
The other ones are like, whoa! It's like a 3-ring circus, right? I mean, it's like just like super fun. I mean, this is fun too, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, it's a BIKEVIDS, so open your lids, kids. Oh, pump on the brake in the back caskets is a BIKEVIDS. It's time to stop or flop because your bike's in the shop, and the next best thing on a hold-on block is a BIKEVIDS. So open your lids, kids. Oh, it's time to switch gears and open your ears to BIKEVIDS. Now you subscribe and like, y'all, here.
And then we talked to someone who said, no, that destination is equally just mosquito health.
All right, folks, welcome back to BIKEVIDS. As promised, we're going to do a little debrief of our Oregon trip. But first, would you guys like to introduce yourselves, your names, and I don't know if you want to say anything else about yourself.
I'm Murphy, and I ride bikes a lot and love it, and haven't been riding as many miles as Greg recently, so was a little nervous about trying to keep up on this Oregon trip, but it was lovely trip, and stoked to get to go bike touring again.
Nice. And answered that question, gonna mark it off the BIKEVIDS database question, were you nervous to ride with me before the trip? So thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, you're a winner in like your age group, you like compete, competitively, and it's a lot of pressure.
Nice.
I'm Mark D'Souza, local adventurer. Try to get out there on foot, on with the supple side down.
Nice. And Mark also is a great runner and reminds me that I like running and I should probably do it more often. My name is Greg. I'm the executive producer here, creative director at BIKEVIDS. So first, before we get into some of my questions, I know you guys love the BIKEVIDS database. Let's go maybe just have a little bit of bike talk and talk about the bikes and some of the gear. So let's go check that out.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, don't do that. I want to do that thing where we all let's snap on 3 and then we'll magically transport back there.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. By the way, is we've introduced ourselves and then we've magically transformed back to this area. So yeah. Here I have the DV9, and we're not going to spend hours and hours really talking about anything, but probably some people might be kind of interested in the actual bike stuff. And the thing is, our setups were very similar. We all rode hardtails. Mark and I were riding Ibis, DV9s, and Erica, what is the Santa Cruz one called? Highball. And we kind of had some similar equipment. We had front rolls and basically some kind of rear situation. I chose to go with a rack, an Aero rack. I've also used the Old Man Mountain rear rack. I did not use any frame bag, but we all used also fork bags from different companies, but basically kind of similar situation. We all know Mark and I had backpack hydration bladders. Yes. Erica will talk about how she used her bladder. So either way, even though we're looking just only at my DV9 all nice and cleaned up post-trip, maybe we'll talk about just a little bit of our differences. So did anyone try out anything new this trip and want to talk about that?
Yeah, I didn't bring a backpack. I always go with a backpack, and I always carry my water and sometimes my rain gear and different stuff. And it's hot, but I miss, there's zipper pockets on the sides where you can put your most needed items. And having the water in the middle this time and no backpack was such a trip because it actually, if it wasn't all the way full, or even when it was, it had its little momentum and effect on how the bike handled, and that was weird. At first I thought, like, do I have a flat, or like what's happening? I didn't realize it was going to do that, and once I figured it out, it wasn't too much that it would make me fall or something, but it was a weird feeling to get used to. Super glad I didn't have the backpack though, because it was the hottest week on earth ever, I guess, and so having the
literally
the light,
yeah.
the light on shirt only on my back, and although I did wonder about like just shade and solar protection, like maybe the backpack would have given my back some protection from how strong the sun was, but no, it was kind of nice to not have the backpack. It was a trip to kind of have the hose to like drink from this way, to bend down towards the handlebars to grab it was a little bit weird, but no, it's good overall. That was new and different.
Yeah, I think it's I think sometimes when we do these things, like it really points out the fact that it's just our, you know, with every choice there's the cost of what could have been, right? So the pros and cons, and so ultimately, like, you know, these things really just come down to trying different things and, you know, our own personal preferences. Any kind of gear or kind of things you had fun with, Mark, in terms of bike stuff?
The thing that I did different, or I guess maybe, you know, my setup was, oh gosh, let's start over.
Edit.
So the thing that I did different this time
this part is definitely being edited. Don't worry, it's not going to appear in BIKEVIDS at all.
The one thing I did different this time was I brought fork bags.
That's right. You haven't used the fork bags. Yeah.
And honestly, I couldn't even tell it was very convenient. Both my sleeping bag and my sleeping pad fit on either side, so it was like a perfect fit. It was nice to not have to like worry about what was going to get packed in there. It was just two simple things. So I always knew what was in there, so that was really comforting.
Nice.
I'm intrigued by having the water. I would love also, I do carry like 2 liters of water on my back, and I would love to ride without a backpack. Also, I don't want to have that. Water.
I always carry 3 liters, and then you borrow some from me. So it's nice to have the 3 liters not on my back, but like you will be able to carry 3 liters without it being on your back too, I think.
I would like to carry 3 liters of water wherever I go, and have it not be on my back. So I would like
plans and then reality and whatnot. Whereas in terms of backpacks or hydration bladders, I kind of went the opposite. I actually bought a system so I could carry more shit on my back. A 1.5 liter bladder, but also space for just more stuff. So I had a lot of my food and daily snacks in there, and it didn't bother me. So so there you go, you know. Groovy. My bike worked great, no flatties. I did have one crashy, but no whammies, and the crashy was friggin' totally my fault for trying to show off with some track stands. But so my bike worked great. I think Erica's bike worked great.
My bike worked great. Everything, I mean, it's tried and true at this point. I've gone on a lot of trips on that bike, and now that Mark has front bags, I kind of offloaded some of our mutual gear onto him. So I felt, like it was, it worked really good. There was, despite the handlebar bag having a bolt missing, and so it wasn't as secure and snug, but it has a strap that just cinched everything on there. So yeah, it survived, even though it wasn't as 100% not bouncy as it could have been.
Nice. And like I said, I use a rear rack instead of what I call the boner bag. These guys both use boner bags, but they seemed pretty stiff and not floppy. And for my front roll, I use a salsa cage, which weighs a lot, but it's very secure in terms of its mounting, where I think you guys are using a Blackburn system.
And yeah, the mounting is not as secure and stable, and it's been through a lot. I've had it for many, many years. It's gone on a lot of trips, and I've had problems with the latch breaking that locks it in, and we repaired it, and then now there's a bolt that I'll have to actually, to repair it, cut some fabric open to get to to the things. So yeah, not as bomb proof as the salsa. I think I have the salsa cages, and they're really solid and amazing and indestructible.
Nice.
Kind of heavy though is the trade-off.
Right, and because it doesn't make any sense, I'm going with the heavy salsa handlebar setup, but I have some. I guess I'm a snob. I have some King Cage. Titanium handlebar or fork cages that fucking weigh nothing and are awesome.
Boner bag though works good. The Ojeda Negra bag, it's like it really does cinch in there pretty well. I don't get a lot of sway in it. Just packing mostly light stuff in there. Although you can pack some heavy stuff up right by the seat post.
I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Mark you had some brake issues.
I had one minor crashy and got a big bruise on my calf, but wasn't that big a deal. And then I had brake issues. Pretty much once we were really hitting that single track downhill, I was really noticing how gone my brake was. And fortunately, we got to go to that really sweet bike shop in Oak Ridge, and they helped fix it up for me real quick and shared a lot of knowledge with me on how to take care of it if I am stranded and in need in the wild.
Nice. And there's in the episode you could see that bike shop there, and that was also enlightening to me. I feel like you inspired me to. I also bought a backup pair of brake pads. I've not normally taken them on bike tours, even though I'm less experienced on off-road bike touring, but what your experience makes perfect sense in hindsight, because we were basically riding like downhill single track that like people would do like for fun, like we would do on a weekend. Probably not, well, I don't know, I'm not a big mountain biker, like, but like, you know, these are like things that people would go fast on. We're doing those, but then also with how much extra weight, right?
Oh my gosh.
You know, so like the wear and tear on the brakes, like that was like actually very, I think, helpful for all of us that you had that experience, because it definitely made us think like, okay, I'm not going to leave on another trip without having a backup pair of brake pads.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Nice, guys.
Okay, so that was fun.
And we're back.
Yeah. Oh, and we're back.
So the first thing we'll talk about is our route. And before Mark and Erica maybe share, I will just say the original plan that you know nothing about, but it was basically a take on the very, I'd say, famous Ochoco Divide route that goes through the Ochoco National Forest, and also a blend with a trip that some of the best bike vids made by PNW Bikepacking, Pacific Northwest Bikepacking YouTube channel did, which was a take on the Ochoco Divide route. And so that was kind of my original inspiration, but that's not what we did. So does someone want to talk about like maybe why we decided to not go with that trip, and then how we kind of came up with this idea?
I would love to comment.
Nice.
So I was watching the weather, because having adventured a lot, that is something that you really need to pay attention to for safety and for just knowing what clothes to bring, water to bring. And we were gonna hit like mid to high 90s on that route during that trip. And it turns out it was the hottest week on earth ever. And we were going east into the deserty area, and that to me seemed like maybe we would melt. And do you love melting on a bike tour? So we last minute rerouted to go west up into the Cascades, up into the really lush green forest, higher elevation, cooler temperatures. So that was the initial plan. And then because we had planned the Ochoco Divide for like 4 months or something, and then we had like 4 days to reroute and plan a whole other trip. Mark really stepped in. I was working my butt off to get ready for the trip, and Mark totally found and routed us a new way to go.
When we made the plan, I would say that it felt like, oh gosh, our mile numbers are so low, we're going to be done early and bored. And I think we all left thinking we might be bored, and I think that the opposite ended up becoming true.
and it was another, also, if I might say, lesson in like how much harder and slower it is with single track riding, and also when you don't all have trustworthy bike computers and the route, because cue sheets or like paper maps or some way to navigate, because that slowed us down, that increased our time again.
Yeah.
But yeah, single track riding is so much different than gravel road or pavement riding, right? Like so.
So that was kind of our route, and you could kind of look at all the Strava stuff if you want, if you see those links and follow me. Next question. Were there any physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual challenges that you faced on this trip?
I would say that what was the second? Mental. We after day 1 and day 2, which were really some of the best days of riding, but also we got in late on after day 2 and we're pretty tired. So on day 3, we ended up making a decision to reroute ourselves, and we did some highway miles. And I would say, mentally, riding on the highway just like totally brought me down, and I was not excited about riding. I mean, I will do it, it's fine, but I'm definitely not gonna like, or maybe my past self now is seeing that as something where I just didn't put in all the effort and was more of an Eeyore and thinking about like just trying to get through it as opposed to trying to kick ass on it. And so that was like my biggest mental challenge, was the highway days and riding on the highway miles.
Highways suck. Yeah. Riding on the highways does suck. And it was hot, and then we had to ride through a fucking scary ass tunnel, and it was all climbing, so it was, it was hot climbing next to big trucks.
And we've all done road touring and stuff like that. I mean, we're not haven't done the most of things, but we haven't done the least of things. But this isn't the Pacific Coast cycling route, right? So this isn't a part of the West Coast that is like the road touring thing. These are, even though they're major, but these are lesser traveled for 99% of people, highways. And yeah, I would say like sketchy,
Sketchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty hardened about it. I've traveled a lot on road tour all over the place, all over the West anyways, and like, it's just kind of rugged, you're called upon to be very brave.
Yes. I mean, every car that goes by, is a potential murder scene.
Right.
And,
your murder scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so obviously, we're all drivers also.
Right.
And we know that nobody wants to actually hit us or, and have that on their conscience. So we know that people do want to avoid us, but I know that if push came to shove, they would probably lean towards knocking one of us out rather than a car. So it's wears on you, and it's loud.
Yeah. I did have an all 3 combo tornado in one of a challenge when there was a pile of logs and a bog of mosquitoes just coming up out of them, and we had to lift the bikes over like a set of big logs. I had to climb up on the log, and all the while the mosquitoes were just, so that was a moment of great both spiritual, mental, and emotional challenge where I wanted to just run away from the bike and just leave it there and flee, because panic of the mosquitoes attacking. But then also it cracks me up that was like your favorite part of the trip.
Yeah,
you really held on to that.
So that cracks me up.
I really did.
And it cracks me up. So it's like, and also it's the suffering is great. You know what I mean? Like when you get into a place where you have to really tolerate some, trifecta of hardship, it is memorable, and it is part of the story that you never don't tell that. You always tell that part of the story. You always remember that part of the story. And so on adventures, I try to be open to the moment that we're in, and try to go with it and go with the flow, and remember even the hardest of moments are meaningful, so.
Yeah, that was fucking insane. And, you know, so I guess I would say, like, in terms of, like, you know, there were some times with particularly some of the bug stuff where I just wanted to, like, lay down and cry, you know, like, but you can't, you know, like, you can't do that, you know, you're in the
They will only make it worse. They'll attack you on the ground.
And then eventually you'll realize what hopefully you realize before you do that is, you know, I just need to get through this. So for me, you know, it's just, I guess, like, kind of confidence that, like, hey, you know, like, I could do hard things and I could be out there. And I'm not saying we were ever at risk of, you know, well, you know, other than just accidents that could happen. But, you know, we weren't, you know, this is not completely outback. But I would just say, like, for me, just this idea that facing challenges and working through them and, you know, processing how to deal with them at the time is, you know, all of these things combined.
When I look back and when I've done other long distance tours on dirt, I've always brought paper maps and a bike computer, both, and then also the surrounding area, so when you need to bail you can see where to go and what's available over there. And so yeah, it felt like I put too much trust in the digital navigation and didn't have the full capacities, I felt like, of being able to see, like, oh yeah, look at all these roads we could take.
Right.
You know?
And
mosquitoes absolutely
trigger freak out.
I feel like you could quote me on I think at one point I was yelling, I can't make good decisions when there's mosquitoes around.
Yeah.
Yes. And for me it's the heat. I just cannot. I've had heat stroke a couple different times in my life, and I'm super affected by especially the strong direct sunlight
throughout the day. Basically, generally taking care of yourself. This is an important thing when you're doing multi-day bike trips. Is, you know, basically the basics are hydration and eating and just generally taking care of yourself. How did we do? How'd you guys do?
Yeah, I have thoughts and feelings about that one.
Sure.
Yeah, I have learned for many years about my nutrition and had so many fails and so many bonking times, and like that I tend to overbring food. Like I tend to like want, and also we had kind of planned for more nights out in the wilderness and had to reroute due to the trail conditions and the mosquitoes and all of that. But you know, I brought more food than I needed, and I feel like that kind of it's like, it's always a challenge when you go out into the wilderness. Like, you don't want to bring so much that it's too much, but then you also don't want to starve out there. If you have a mechanical and you need to spend an extra night out, it is very reassuring to have backup food, you know, and I don't want to starve. So I feel like I mean, on this not starving front, totally won. I did mess up and eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast, though, which was a bad move.
You guys
I
really
know
went
better.
to town. You really went to town on that. Like,
oh no,
I do recall that moment. I was like, Jesus Christ, these guys are.
No, I just ate a package of Pop-Tarts. I mean, there's just 2 Pop-Tarts, and I ate them and drank coffee, and it was a normal amount of Pop-Tarts. But it was nothing else for breakfast, and I usually am a real protein for breakfast type person, and if I eat carbs in the morning, I usually bonk. So that was kind of dumb, but we were like thinking we were going to be out for a couple more nights, so I was saving the protein breakfast, the dehydrated breakfast, for when we were out there, you know? So, yeah, that was a little bit of a fail.
Pop-Tarts are not breakfast.
Don't eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast. It's bullshit.
I didn't mean to imply that she was having more than the normal serving of, what is the normal serving again? 2 Pop-Tarts?
I mean, they
One
come in a package of 2, and
okay.
I ate them.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
so
I figure that's one. I don't know.
It was more than
It seemed like the right thing to do in the moment, but then no, I know better. Don't eat sugar for breakfast. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I also had kind of a bonking moment after the Pop-Tart, but for the most part, I feel like I've really gotten great about my nutrition. Last year when we did the Grindero, it really came to light to me how I was not getting enough electrolytes during regular, just any riding time, only drinking water and just getting electrolytes like maybe after or at other times. But I really need those with me, and that's made a huge difference. And otherwise, I did bring too much food also, because I was worried about those things. So I was well covered.
Provisioned.
I was well provisioned.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is making it accessible for myself. kind of learned this through backpacking. I would pack all my food in my beer can and put it in my backpack and then not eat all day. So having the food out that I'm going to eat on my backpack, I translated into putting the food into the snack bags on the handlebars.
Right.
And
That's something we forgot to talk about in the bike check. We all had at least one. We call it the chuck
feed bag.
The chuck bucket or the
bucket.
feed bag.
Yeah,
the handlebar bags that are round.
Yeah,
They fit a ton of snacks in there. So I just put all my snacks in there, and that way I can eat whenever.
Yeah,
I
big
have
up
a
to
free
the
hand.
Oveja
Whenever I can take a hand off a
Negra,
handlebar.
chuck bucket. That's a great. I really like that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of my bags sponsored by Roadrunner, and also their handlebar bag. I had in there also wipes, face like wipes like, and I had my toothbrush and toothpaste in there because sometimes maybe this is fucking gross or dumb. Sometimes I'll like pack up all my shit and then realize I forgot to like brush my teeth. So like I was like, I'm putting the toothbrush and toothpaste
Right on top.
right in
Easy
there.
access.
Because like in order of operations for me, like I'm very particular about like packing up and blah blah. And so like for order of operations, like I think that was good, and that's why I went with that new harness because it had really good pockets for snacks. And like Eric is 100% correct. Like you need. What I would do is before we headed off, I would pack what I thought would be at least my amount of daily intake, easily accessible. And then if I had to go into some rolled bags, I would, which I did. And I think we all kind of were starving at that point because I think when we got into the town of Oak Ridge, we all kind of like just went nuts and gorged a bunch of food, which is cool and fun because I like a lot of things people like about riding bikes and doing these things. It's like, oh, you get to eat a lot of food, but you don't really want to do it in 100% like animal style. And at least for me, like I feel like I was in animal style that night. And
I was too. I kept waiting for us to get to town because I thought we were right there. I kept thinking, oh, we're almost. I don't want to eat another power bar. I've already eaten so many power bars today. I'll wait till we get to town. But I did finally have to eat a power bar. It was a much longer descent than it seemed. And by the time we got to the bottom, I already should have had another snack even to get us to the restaurant because then we had to climb some hill to get over to the.
On the nutrition front, I could have done better as far as the like having more variety, I guess, because I feel like I had a little too many sugary ones, so that at a certain point in the day, like I kind of I didn't really want any more kind of candy bar type of power bars. And so something else might have been better because I think at a certain point you start kind of I was kind of repelling food or didn't want to eat anything. Plus, also I was hoping to go get like a burger and fries at the brewery when we got to town.
Nice. Turkey jerky was my savory. Honestly, I didn't eat as many as I thought I would, but that was like in case I'm like, fuck this, like stuff based around fig or whatever,
right? Like, everything's sweet.
Fig and date.
Dates. Nice. Nice. Let's take a pause.
Let's take a pause. I totally had a little cough. Oh.
GoPro. Turn off.
Oh, is this supposed to hear you clap and do things?
I think that it does have, I think, a text-to-speech.
Part 2, brought to you by one of the best beers in town, Num Num Juice.
We're back with Num Num Juice.
When I drink beer,
which is very rarely. I mean, for special occasions. Putting this shit together is exhausting, guys. Next question. We have just a couple more questions left. I don't want to say one word, but let's just throw it out there, and it's okay if it's more than one. But that's I don't like to make those kind of rigid boundaries.
Thanks.
But let's just say it was one word. How would you answer or finish this statement? On this trip, I was most grateful for.
Aww.
Why am I laughing already? Because I'm laughing because my answer I know is more than one word. Just as I was reading that, I'm like, I'm going to be that person. So on this trip, I was most grateful for.
On this trip, I was most grateful for your coaching. While we were out there, I mentioned a moment ago about how I turned into kind of an Eeyore when we were riding on the highway, and your coaching on kind of like a mentality on just cycling in general. I forget how you phrase it, but you're basically recommending like, hey, instead, like, my mentality on the bike has just kind of always been be in a gear that's maybe a little one gear under where there's any real stress. So just kind of like spinning it lightly and you're moving forward and everything's hunky-dory. Whereas your motivation or your suggestion was, hey, try to get in a gear that's, you know, at least one more that's a little bit harder. And it was a very uplifting experience. I was going faster. I felt like I had better form. I felt like I had a better mental attitude because I felt like I was contributing more to where I was trying to get to, and it really changed my outlook on, I mean, not just the trip, but about cycling in general. And I'm really looking forward to like kind of getting back on the bike and seeing what the next year looks like of cycling.
Give Mark a hug for that answer.
Well, thank you, man. That was really, no, I really appreciate it. And I like, no, I meant it all.
I want to say my companions I'm most grateful for. You guys are good vibes, and the vibes are so awesome, and it's so neat to like, you know, I bike toured a lot by myself, and it's so fun to have a crew to travel with, and the times that we were cruising together and feeling like a bike gang, totally fun, and like the way that like people came up on us when we were finally at the summit of that very long, felt like we were riding backwards up the flow trail in, you know, SoCal demonstration forest. We got to the top, we ran into those people who got shuttled to the top, and they were like, you guys, what? Like, that was really fun. Like, yeah, the camaraderie of being a group together was really awesome, and grateful for that. And the way we pulled it together and regrouped when we came up with like, oh shit, we need to reroute, and we pulled it all off. It was, you know, chaotic and confusing at moments, and like, but yeah, always a good vibes there. And just, yeah, that was, thank you.
Nice. Group hug. Nice. Hey. That was great.
I would say similar. I would say our communication. There were a lot of times where we had to figure things out, and these are the exact times when relationships are stressed.
Right.
You know? Look at the state of the country right now, for Christ's sakes.
I know. It's so easy to, like, when you're stressed and you're hot and you're frustrated.
Right. Yeah, and so I would say our communication, and also kind of background on that is, you know, of course, we're all very different people. I hope I'm not outing the fact that Mark and Erica are partners, and we're all good friends, but, you know, I mean, we're still just three people that have to deal with each other. And so I feel like in our communication, like for me, that's probably like pushing, like sometimes I want to communicate less and get to the point, but guys, it's not worth it. It's worth like talking and figuring things out together, because then we have full ownership of everything on the trip, you know. And so I really appreciate you guys bringing out like good communication.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you. I felt like, you know, one of the things that's important is when you're doing something like that is to, I mean, I felt heard whenever we were doing something and had to make a decision. And I felt like, I hope it sounds like everybody else hopefully also felt that way, as you know. Yeah, I felt like we were, we all came together, and even though there were things that were hard, I didn't even ever feel any stress between us, just that, like, how are we going to achieve this? And we were all working towards the same goal.
Yeah. And even though like the exact path of the route had to change, I mean, that stressful moment when we were all hiding in the tent from the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And we had just climbed to like one of the highest points on our whole route, and it became clear to us that like we had to turn back and go back downhill and like hit the lowlands again. We all communicated through it. We kept, you know, we all had strong feelings. We were disappointed and like freaked out, and like, yeah, but still,
I'm saying.
you know.
Okay,
Hey,
last
we're very fun.
last question.
Special guests.
And this is kind of similar to the Grateful For, but I feel like different in the sense that this kind of gets to the point of like, why do we do this? Why do we do these things, right? Why go on just some, trip out and sleep in the dirt and whatnot and filter water out of streams and stuff? So is there any value, or this particular trip, is there a particular value or contribution that this trip has maybe added to your life?
I'm full of the goodness of Oregon now. Yeah, that was amazing. Like, I really don't know the Cascades that well. Like, I don't know the land that well. I've been there once, and now I have a much better appreciation for the plants that grow there and the beautiful, we saw some species of bat I'd never seen, and like the vistas from those mountaintops were incredible, and yeah, just the general, and also the people of Oregon too. It was a whole eye-opening experience to see the contrast between Oak Ridge and Bend, and like the disparity between rich and poor there is really stark, and that made me have more compassion for the people of Oregon, and just beautiful appreciation for the land and the rivers, and so I really felt like that was a neat experience to get to go and understand the place itself better.
But yeah, my kind of just in terms of lasting, every time, this has only been my third or fourth, basically like what I would call like it's called bikepacking is what the term is, right? But I just bike touring in the dirt. It's like,
I like to call it bike camping, because it's like really, you're going camping on your bike. Sometimes it's pavement, sometimes it's dirt.
Right, and there is a point in the vid where I use that term camping, that not intentionally. It's just what seems to make the most sense to me too. But like what maybe viewers of BIKEVIDS don't know is that like I used to be very averse, to being that deep in nature, or not having a lot of just constant amenities. It relates to my neurotic tendencies, but like the idea of just being clean at all times. So for me, like every trip I do like that, and dial my scene of like what works for me to make it work, like is a major victory, so that would be a big takeaway from this, because this was probably one of the longer trips that I have done in that way.
Neat. That's so cool, because that's something that I just really think will serve you well as you go forward in bike touring. Like, it's so great to be able to feel more and more comfortable being in the wilderness. It's so good for us to be in nature and like.
So what's the question again? It's the
any kind of more longer term value that this trip added to your life?
Well, I'm going to answer that question with this. One of the things I learned on this was, I think that you can ask people to endure one hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask them to endure two hard things, and that's not asking too much. But when you get to 3 hard things, you got to make a plan to make things better. Coming soon.
Right.
Because once you have 3 hard things, all of a sudden a 4th could come up, and now you're going to be in a life-threatening situation. So like climbing all uphill, super hot, now you're adding mosquitoes, that's 3.
Trifecta of
now,
doom.
now you're gonna add the 4th thing. That's gonna be too much, and you got to try to keep it at 2 hard things at most. 3 hard things for short term. Hey, we're gonna get through it, but you don't want to get to 4 hard things. That's where things start getting dire.
4 hard things in that scenario, like running out of water.
Like running out of water.
Exactly.
Getting lost.
Yeah, right.
Like that.
You're going uphill. It's super hot.
Right.
Tons of
And
mosquitoes, and now you're out of water.
Right. And is there water available? Yes. But do you need to stand still in order to pump that? And then what is happening? The mosquitoes. So
we did have to pump water at that creek, and it took 2 bandanas swatting him to get him to be able to pump the water.
Right. You guys, that's what you did. I did not stay for this. So this is
he ran out of water because he bailed because he couldn't stand still for the water pumping.
Right. So I did not. I took off at that point.
Yep, it is a lot. It is a lot to take. That third thing, trifecta of doom.
Yeah, but
So
just not for
true.
long.
Can I add another thing that I take away from this trip?
Yes. Yeah.
Paper maps. Circling back to paper maps or just better navigation. So I need to shop it up. But honestly, like, I was so confident in my navigation. I traveled solo on the Great Divide route. I rode the Idaho Hot Springs route. I've been all these places, other unnamed routes that I've just ridden off road by myself with paper maps and never gotten lost, or always had options, easy reroutes, because you just see the whole. I used to bring AAA maps back in the day and be able to see the lay of the land, plus the more specific cue sheets and all the and so yeah, I feel like I want to step up my navigational abilities again and be ready for that, because
yeah, we were.
And then we just stayed flexible, and Mark was like, we got to get to internet so we can find a route, because from where we were sitting, all we could see